What if saving someone meant risking everything, even the world itself? One night, I found an alien girl begging for help in the woods. Her name was Lyra, and she carried a secret so dangerous it could destroy us both. But the real question wasn't whether I could save her. It was whether I could survive what came next. Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about aliens and danger. It's about a choice that could change the fate of an entire planet, and the terrifying truth hidden in the heart of a glowing seed. Story begins as the night was quiet, too quiet. I was out in the woods behind my house, flashlight in hand, calling for my dog, Max. He'd bolted off earlier, chasing something into the trees, and I wasn't about to let him get lost out here. The woods were thick, and the air smelled like rain, the kind of heavy, damp scent that makes you feel like the sky might split open at any moment. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, bouncing off tree trunks and casting long, eerie shadows. "Mux!" I called again, my voice echoing. Still no bark, no rustling in the bushes. Just silence. And then it happened. A deafening boom shook the ground, so loud it felt like the earth itself was cracking open. I stumbled, dropping the flashlight, and for a split second, everything went dark. Then a blinding light exploded above the trees, brighter than anything I'd ever seen. It lit up the entire forest, turning night into day, and I threw my arm over my eyes, shielding them from the glare. The light faded as quickly as it came, but the air felt different now, charged like the world was holding its breath. My heart pounded in my chest, and I scrambled to grab the flashlight, my hands shaking. "Mux!" I shouted again, my voice cracking. Still nothing. I turned toward where the light had come from, my feet moving almost on their own. The trees thinned out, and there it was, a smoking crater in the ground, about the size of a small house. In the middle of it was a ship, but not like any ship I'd ever seen. It was small, sleek, and silver, with strange symbols etched into its surface. It looked broken, pieces of it scattered around the crater, sparks flying from its jagged edges. My mouth went dry. This wasn't a plane. This wasn't anything human. And then I saw her. She was lying in the grass just outside the crater, her body half hidden by the tall weeds. At first, I thought she was hurt, or worse. But as I got closer, I realized she was moving, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Her skin glowed faintly under the moonlight, a soft, silvery sheen that made her look almost like a ghost. Her hair was the same color, long and tangled, and her clothes, if you could call them that, were made of some kind of shimmering fabric that seemed to shift and change as she moved. I froze, my brain screaming at me to run, to get out of there and never look back. But then her eyes fluttered open, and I couldn't move. They were a deep, shimmering purple, like galaxies swirling in the night sky. She looked at me, and for a moment, I felt like she could see right through me, like she knew every thought I'd ever had. "Please," she whispered, her voice soft but urgent. She reached out a hand, her fingers trembling. "Help me." I hesitated, my heart racing. This was insane. Aliens weren't real. Spaceships didn't crash in the woods behind my house. And yet, here she was, staring at me with those impossible eyes, begging for help. Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she tried to sit up, wincing in pain. I instinctively stepped forward, reaching out to steady her. Her skin was warm, almost like it was humming with energy, and the moment I touched her, a strange sensation shot through me, like a jolt of electricity, but not painful. More like alive. "Lyra," she finally said, her voice weak but clear. "My name is Lyra." "I'm Jake," I said, still trying to process what was happening. Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but I could tell she was lying. Her movements were slow, deliberate, like every motion cost her something. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes scanning the trees, and then she grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Listen to me," she said, her voice low and urgent. "They're coming. If they find me, they'll kill us both." "Who's coming?" I asked, my stomach twisting into knots. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me with those piercing purple eyes, and for the first time, I saw real fear in them. "Please," she said again, her voice breaking. "You have to help me. I don't have much time." I didn't know what to do. Every instinct told me to run, to leave her there and pretend I'd never seen her. But something about her, the way she looked at me, the way she spoke, made it impossible to walk away. "Okay," I said finally, my voice shaky. "I'll help you." She nodded, relief flooding her face, but it didn't last long. A low hum filled the air, like the sound of 1,000 bees, and her eyes widened in terror. "They're here," she whispered, and that's when I realized this wasn't just about helping her. This was about surviving. Whatever was coming, it wasn't just after her. It was after me, too. I didn't have time to think. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the air like a warning. Lyra grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. "We need to hide. Now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my heart pounding, and helped her to her feet. She was lighter than I expected, almost like she wasn't entirely solid. Her skin still felt warm, that strange humming energy radiating from her. I slung her arm over my shoulder, supporting her as we stumbled away from the crater. The woods were dark, the trees closing in around us, and every shadow seemed to move. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice shaky. "Somewhere safe," she replied, her eyes darting around. "Somewhere they won't find us." I led her to the old shed behind my house. It was small, dusty, and filled with junk, old tools, broken furniture, and boxes of stuff my dad had been meaning to throw out for years. But it was the best I could do. I helped Lyra inside, and she sank down onto an old crate, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Who's coming?" I asked again, my voice low. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting it to burst open at any second. Lyra hesitated, her fingers twisting together. She looked at me, her purple eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "The collectors," she said finally. "They're not like me. They don't care about your kind. They'll take what they want and destroy the rest." "What do they want?" I asked, my stomach twisting. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she whispered, "Me." There was something she wasn't telling me. I could see in the way she avoided my gaze, the way her voice trembled. But before I could ask more, she grabbed my arm again, her grip tight. "You have to promise me something," she said, her voice urgent. "No matter what happens, don't let them take me. If they do, it won't just be me they destroy. It'll be everything." "What do you mean, everything?" I asked, my voice rising. She shook her head, her silver hair shimmering in the dim light. "I can't explain now. There's no time. Just promise me." I stared at her, my mind racing. This was insane. Aliens? Collectors? It sounded like something out of a movie. But the fear in her eyes was real, and so was the hum growing louder outside. "Okay," I said finally. "I promise." She nodded, relief flickering across her face, but it didn't last long. The hum outside grew louder, closer, and Lyra's eyes widened. "They're here," she whispered. I peeked out the cracked window of the shed and saw them. 3 figures, tall and thin, their skin a sickly gray. They moved like shadows, gliding across the ground without making a sound. Their eyes glowed red, scanning the area like predators searching for prey. "Stay here," I told Lyra, grabbing a rusty shovel from the corner. "No," she hissed, her voice frantic. "You can't fight them. They're too strong." But it was too late. One of the collectors turned its head, its glowing red eyes locking onto mine. It raised a hand, and a beam of light shot toward the shed. I ducked just in time, the beam burning a hole in the wall where my head had been. My heart raced, and I turned to Lyra. "We need to go. Now." She nodded, her face pale, and I helped her to her feet. We slipped out the back door of the shed, staying low as we moved through the tall grass. The collectors were close, their hum filling the air, and I could feel the heat of their beams as they shot past us. "Where are we going?" I gasped, my lungs burning. "The ship," Lyra said, her voice weak but determined. "It's our only chance." We reached the crater, but the ship was in worse shape than before. Smoke poured from its sides, and the lights flickered weakly. Can it still fly? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lyra didn't answer. She climbed inside, her hands flying over the controls. The ship groaned, and for a moment I thought it was done for. Then, with a shudder, it rose into the air. Get in, she yelled. I jumped inside, just as the collectors reached the crater. The door slammed shut, and we shot into the sky, the ground falling away beneath us. But as we flew, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. Lyra's secret, whatever it was, hung between us like a storm cloud, waiting to break. And I had a feeling that when it did, nothing would ever be the same. The ship groaned as it climbed higher, the trees below shrinking into a blur of green. My stomach churned, and I gripped the edge of the seat, trying to steady myself. Lyra sat in the pilot's chair, her hands moving quickly over the controls. Her face was pale, her silver hair sticking to her forehead with sweat, but her eyes were focused, determined. Where are we going? I asked, my voice shaky. Somewhere safe, she replied, not looking at me. Somewhere they can't follow. I glanced out the window. The collectors were still down there, their red eyes glowing like embers in the dark. One of them raised its hand, and a beam of light shot toward us. The ship jerked to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. They're still after us. I shouted, my heart racing. I know, Lyra said through gritted teeth. She pushed a button, and the ship lurched forward, speeding through the night sky. The hum of the collector's ship grew louder, and I turned to see it rising behind us. It was bigger than Lyra's ship, darker, with jagged edges that looked like they could cut through the air itself. Can't this thing go any faster? I asked, my voice rising. I'm trying, Lyra snapped, her hands flying over the controls. But the ship's damaged. It's not built for this kind of chase. Another beam shot past us, closer this time, and the ship shuddered. Warning lights flashed on the dashboard, and an alarm blared, sharp and piercing. What's that? I asked, my voice panicked. We're losing power, Lyra said, her voice tight. If they hit us again, we're done for. I looked at her, my mind racing. There has to be something we can do. She hesitated, her eyes flicking to me for a moment before returning to the controls. There is, she said slowly, but it's dangerous. More dangerous than getting shot out of the sky. I asked, raising an eyebrow. She didn't smile. If I divert all power to the engines, we might be able to outrun them, but it'll shut down the life support systems. We'll have about 5 minutes before we run out of air. I stared at her, my stomach sinking. 5 minutes. She nodded, her face grim. It's the only way. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Do it. Lyra's hands moved quickly, flipping switches and pressing buttons. The ship lurched forward again, faster this time, and the hum of the collector's ship grew fainter. But the air inside the cabin grew thinner, and I could feel my chest tightening. How long? I asked, my voice strained. 3 minutes, Lyra replied, her face pale. I glanced out the window. The collector's ship was still behind us, but it was falling back, the distance between us growing. We're losing them, I said, a flicker of hope rising in my chest. Don't celebrate yet, Lyra said, her voice weak. We're not out of the woods. The air grew thinner, and I could feel my head starting to spin. My vision blurred, and I gripped the edge of the seat, trying to stay conscious. Lyra, I gasped, my voice barely above a whisper. Hold on, she said, her voice faint. Just a little longer. The ship shuddered again, and the collector's ship disappeared from view. The hum faded, and the air grew still. We did it, Lyra said, her voice barely audible. We lost them, but the victory was short-lived. The air was almost gone, and my vision was fading fast. I looked at Lyra, her silver hair shimmering in the dim light, and reached out to her. Lyra, I whispered, my hand falling limp. The last thing I saw was her face, her purple eyes filled with fear, before everything went black. I woke up gasping, my lungs burning as I sucked in air. The first thing I saw was Lyra's face, her purple eyes wide with relief. She was leaning over me, her silver hair falling like a curtain around us. You're okay, she said, her voice soft but shaky. I thought I lost you. I sat up slowly, my head spinning. We were still in the ship, but it was quiet now, the alarm silenced. The air was cool and fresh, and I realized Lyra must have restored the life support systems. What happened? I asked, my voice hoarse. We made it, she said, sitting back on her heels. I managed to get us far enough away that the collectors lost our trail. But we're not safe yet. They'll keep looking. I rubbed my temples, trying to clear the fog in my mind. Where are we? Lyra stood and walked to the window, her movements slow and deliberate. I followed her gaze and saw nothing but endless ocean below us, the moonlight reflecting off the waves. A remote island, she said, far from anyone who could help us. But it's the best place to hide for now. I joined her at the window, staring out at the vast expanse of water. How long can we stay here? Not long, she admitted. The ship's damaged. It won't hold together much longer. I turned to her, my stomach twisting. What happens then? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked back to the controls, her fingers brushing over the buttons and switches. We need to find a way to fix it, or find another way off this planet. Another way? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Like what? She hesitated, her eyes flicking to me before looking away. There's something I haven't told you. I crossed my arms, my heart sinking. What is it? She took a deep breath, her shoulders rising and falling. The collectors aren't just after me. They're after something I'm carrying. Something important. I stared at her, my mind racing. What are you talking about? She placed a hand on her chest, her fingers trembling. A seed, the last of its kind. If they get it, they'll use it to destroy worlds. But if I can get it to safety, it can grow into something that will protect us all. My mouth went dry. A seed? What kind of seed? She shook her head. I can't explain it all now. But you need to know this. If they catch us, they'll take it from me. And they'll kill you to keep it a secret. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't want to put you in more danger than you already are, she said, her voice breaking. But now you need to know the truth. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process everything. So what do we do? She looked at me, her eyes filled with determination. We protect it, no matter what. Before I could respond, the ship shuddered, and a loud clang echoed through the cabin. Lyra's eyes widened, and she rushed to the controls. What's happening? I asked, my voice rising. They found us, she said, her hands flying over the buttons. The collectors. They're here. I looked out the window and saw it. A dark, jagged ship descending from the clouds, its red eyes glowing like fire. We need to go, Lyra said, grabbing my arm. Now. Where? I asked, my heart pounding. To the island, she said, her voice urgent. We'll hide there, but we need to move fast. She grabbed a small, glowing orb from the dashboard and shoved it into my hands. It was warm, pulsing with a soft light. What's this? I asked, staring at it. The seed, she said, her eyes locking onto mine. Protect it, no matter what. I nodded, my throat tight, and followed her to the door. The ship groaned as we stepped outside, the air thick with the scent of salt and smoke. The collector's ship was closer now, its hum filling the air like a warning. Lyra grabbed my hand, her grip tight. Run, she said, and don't look back. We sprinted across the beach, the sand slowing our steps. Behind us, the collector's ship landed, its red eyes scanning the area. I clutched the seed to my chest, its warmth spreading through me, and prayed we'd make it out alive. The island was a maze of jagged rocks and dense foliage, the kind of place where every shadow felt like it was watching you. Lyra and I ran, our feet slipping on the wet sand as we scrambled toward the tree line. The hum of the collector's ship was everywhere, vibrating through the air like a predator's growl. I clutched the seed tightly, its warmth pulsing against my chest, a strange comfort in the chaos. This way, Lyra hissed, pulling me toward a narrow path that cut through the trees. Her silver hair glinted in the moonlight, and her purple eyes darted back and forth, scanning for danger. We ducked under low-hanging branches, the leaves slapping against our faces as we pushed deeper into the forest. The ground was uneven, roots twisting up like snakes, and I stumbled more than once, my heart racing every time I nearly fell. How much farther? I gasped, my lungs burning. Not far, Lyra said, her voice tight. There's a cave up ahead. We can hide there. I didn't ask how she knew about the cave. At this point, nothing about her surprised me. She moved like she'd been here before, her steps sure and deliberate, even as the collector's hum grew louder behind us. We reached the cave just as a beam of light shot past us, burning a hole in a tree trunk. I flinched, my heart pounding, and Lyra grabbed my arm, yanking me inside. The cave was dark and damp, the air thick with the smell of earth and salt. Stay quiet, Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded, pressing myself against the cold stone wall. The seed in my hands glowed faintly, casting a soft light around us. Lyra's eyes were fixed on the entrance, her body tense, like a coiled spring ready to snap. The hum grew louder, and I could hear footsteps now, heavy, deliberate, and too close for comfort. My breath caught in my throat, and I clutched the seed tighter, its warmth the only thing keeping me grounded. They're here, Lyra mouthed, her eyes wide. I didn't need to ask who she meant. The collectors were outside, their red eyes glowing in the dark like embers. I could see them through the cave entrance, their tall, thin forms moving like shadows. One of them stepped closer, its head tilting as it scanned the area. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure I could hear it. Lyra's hand found mine, her grip tight, and I could feel her trembling. The collector paused, its red eyes narrowing as it stared straight at the cave entrance. For a moment, I thought it had seen us, but then it turned away, its movements slow and deliberate, and disappeared into the trees. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, my legs shaking. Lyra slumped against the wall, her face pale. They'll be back, she whispered. We need to move. Where? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked at me, her purple eyes filled with determination. To the heart of the island. There's a place there, a safe place. If we can reach it, we might have a chance. Might? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She didn't answer. Instead, she stood, her movements slow and careful, and motioned for me to follow. We moved deeper into the cave, the darkness pressing in around us. The seed's glow was our only light, casting strange shadows on the walls. The air grew colder, and the sound of dripping water echoed around us. What's at the heart of the island? I asked, my voice low. Lyra hesitated, her steps slowing. A sanctuary, she said finally. A place where the seed can grow. But it's dangerous. If the collectors find us there, she didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. I could see it in her eyes, the fear, the desperation. We reached the end of the cave, where a narrow tunnel led deeper into the island. Lyra turned to me, her face serious. Once we go in, there's no turning back, she said. Are you ready? I looked at the seed in my hands, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. Then I looked at Lyra, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dark. I'm ready, I said. She nodded, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place, gratitude, maybe, or hope. Then she turned and stepped into the tunnel, and I followed, the darkness closing in behind us. The tunnel was narrow and damp, the walls slick with moisture. The seed's glow was our only light, casting eerie shadows that danced along the stone. Every step felt like a gamble, the ground uneven and slippery beneath our feet. Lyra moved ahead of me, her silver hair catching the faint light, her movements quick and silent. I followed as quietly as I could, the seed clutched tightly in my hands, its warmth a constant reminder of what was at stake. How much farther? I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of dripping water. Not far, Lyra replied, her voice low, but we need to be careful. The sanctuary is protected, but it's not foolproof. Protected by what? I asked, my stomach twisting. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she paused, her head tilting as if listening for something. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The air felt heavier here, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. By things you wouldn't understand, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Things that don't exist in your world. I wanted to ask more, but the look in her eyes stopped me. There was something there, something ancient and knowing, that made me feel small like a child staring into the vastness of the night sky. We moved forward again, the tunnel gradually widening until it opened into a massive cavern. The air was warmer here, and the walls glowed faintly, as if the stone itself was alive. In the center of the cavern was a pool of water, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the soft light like a mirror. "This is it," Lyra said, her voice filled with awe. "The sanctuary." I stepped closer to the pool, the seed's glow intensifying as if responding to the energy in the air. "What do we do now?" Lyra turned to me, her purple eyes glowing in the dim light. "We plant the seed, but once we do, there's no going back. It will grow quickly, and it will change everything." "Change how?" I asked, my voice trembling. She hesitated, her fingers brushing against the seed in my hands. "It will create a shield, a barrier that will protect this world from the collectors. But it will also awaken something that has been dormant for a very long time." I stared at her, my mind racing. "What are you talking about?" She took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto mine. "The seed isn't just a weapon or a shield. It's a key to something much bigger than us." Before I could ask more, a loud hum filled the cavern, vibrating through the air like a warning. Lyra's eyes widened as she grabbed my arm. "They're here," she said, her voice urgent. "We're out of time." I turned to see the collectors emerging from the tunnel, their red eyes glowing like fire. They moved slowly, deliberately, their tall, thin forms casting long shadows on the cavern walls. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice panicked. Lyra's grip tightened on my arm. "Plant the seed. Now." I didn't hesitate. I dropped to my knees at the edge of the pool and placed the seed in the water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the water began to ripple, the glow from the seed spreading like wildfire. The collectors stepped closer, their hum growing louder, more menacing. Lyra stood in front of me, her arms outstretched, as if she could shield me from them. "It's too late," one of the collectors said, its voice cold and hollow. "You cannot stop us." But then the ground began to shake, the walls of the cavern glowing brighter. The seed's light spread through the water, up the walls, and into the air, filling the cavern with a blinding glow. "What's happening?" I shouted, my voice barely audible over the noise. Lyra turned to me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Relief, maybe, or triumph. "It's awakening," she said, her voice filled with awe. And then everything went white. The light was blinding, overwhelming, like staring into the heart of a star. I shielded my eyes, my body trembling as the ground beneath me shook violently. The hum of the collector's ship was drowned out by a new sound, a deep, resonant pulse that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was as if the island itself was alive, awakening from a long slumber. "Lyra!" I shouted, my voice barely audible over the noise. "What's happening?" She didn't answer. When I finally dared to lower my arm, I saw her standing a few feet away, her silver hair glowing like moonlight, her purple eyes fixed on the pool. The seed was no longer just a seed. It had grown into something enormous, its roots spreading through the water and into the ground, its branches reaching toward the cavern ceiling. The light came from its leaves, each one pulsing with a soft, golden glow. The collectors were frozen in place, their red eyes wide with something I hadn't seen in them before, fear. "It's too late," Lyra said, her voice calm but filled with power. "You cannot stop it now." One of the collectors stepped forward, its voice cold and mechanical. "You have doomed this world. The awakening will bring destruction, not salvation." Lyra turned to face them, her expression fierce. "You don't understand. This isn't destruction. It's rebirth." The ground shook again, and the walls of the cavern began to crack, light pouring through the gaps. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, as the tree continued to grow, its branches breaking through the ceiling and into the sky above. The collectors backed away, their hum growing fainter as they retreated into the tunnel. "Lyra!" I called again, my voice desperate. What is this? What's happening? She turned to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. The seed was never just a weapon or a shield. It was a promise to protect this world and all the worlds connected to it. But to do that, it had to awaken the Guardian. Guardian, I asked, my voice trembling. She nodded, her gaze shifting to the tree. This world has always had a protector, but it's been dormant for centuries. The seed was the key to waking it up. And now that it's awake, the collectors can't touch us. I stared at the tree, its light spreading across the island and into the sky. The air felt different now, cleaner, brighter, like the world itself had taken a deep breath. But what about you? I asked, turning back to Lyra. What happens to you now? She smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I've done what I was meant to do. The Guardian will protect this world now. But I can't stay. My heart sank. What do you mean? She stepped closer, her hand brushing against mine. I'm part of this, Jake. The seed, the Guardian, the sanctuary, it's all connected to me. And now that it's awake, I have to go. Go where? I asked, my voice breaking. She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned forward, her lips brushing against my forehead in a gesture that felt both like a goodbye and a promise. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. And then she stepped back, her body dissolving into light, her form merging with the tree. I reached out, my hand grasping at empty air, but she was gone. The light from the tree grew brighter, spreading across the island and into the ocean, the sky, the stars. I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face as the world around me changed. When the light finally faded, the island was different. The trees were taller, the air sweeter, and the sky seemed closer, as if the world itself had been reborn. And in the center of it all stood the tree, its branches reaching toward the heavens, its leaves glowing with a soft, golden light. I stood, my legs shaky, and walked toward it. As I placed my hand on its trunk, I felt a warmth spread through me, a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. And then, faintly, I heard her voice. I'm still here, it whispered. Always. I smiled through my tears, my hand resting against the tree. The world was safe. The collectors were gone. And Lyra, she was part of something bigger now. But she wasn't alone, and neither was I. Here is the story ends. If you enjoyed and want to watch more thrilling sci-fi adventures, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Dive into epic battles, explore distant galaxies, and join brave heroes as they fight for survival against impossible odds. Let us know in comments if you want next chapters to publish soon. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and become part of the journey. Together, we'll keep the last light burning. Subscribe now and let the adventure continue.